Welcome to The Voter's Voice, where we lay out the bills and you decide if they make sense.
Ever feel like you're just completely drowning in information?
Oh, definitely.
Especially with these huge topics like climate change, corporate responsibility. It's just this flood of data, reports, new rules coming out all the time, and you just want someone to, cut through it and tell you what really matters.
Exactly. A clear path.
Well, that's what we're aiming for today. We're doing a deep dive into California's really groundbreaking new climate disclosure laws.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 253, Senate Bill 261.
Yeah, these are big. They're being called among the most ambitious in the U.S.
Right, and together they make up this kind of dual reporting system. Pretty interesting structure.
That's right. And our mission here is simple. Break down these, frankly, complex laws. What do they actually mean for companies? Not just in California, but, well, everywhere. And why should you care? Whether you're just trying to stay informed or you're an investor, maybe a business professional. Yeah. We've waded through a ton of legal analysis, regulatory updates, all that stuff to pull out the key pieces for you. Hopefully make it clear without all the jargon.
And California, they've often been the leader, the trendsetter on climate policy, haven't they?
They really have.
So these laws feel like a major step up in that commitment. They're really designed to push for transparency, accountability, by getting consistent, standardized information out there. It feels significant.
It absolutely is.
Okay, let's try to unpack this then. These two bills, SB 253 and SB 261, they form this combined climate accountability package.
Right.
And the idea is to give us a more complete picture, right? Both of a company's impact on the climate. That's the emissions part and its vulnerability to climate change, the financial risks.
Exactly. It's looking at both sides of the coin. And what's really strategic, I think, is California's intention here. These aren't just rules for California companies.
Oh.
No, they're explicitly designed, the sources say, to set the stage for carbon emissions disclosure beyond its borders and to influence broader regulatory landscapes. So it feels like a deliberate move. California using its, economic weight to push for wider climate action.
They're not just thinking locally, that they're aiming for a ripple effect.
Precisely. That seems to be the strategy.
And what's really fascinating, you mentioned this alignment. These laws actually line up with big international frameworks, like TCFD and the EU's rules.
Yeah, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD, and the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD.
So California isn't just inventing something totally new here.
Not entirely. They're harmonizing, which is smart. It potentially lowers the reporting burden for companies that are already dealing with those global standards.
Right, makes sense.
It's a signal that they're trying to push towards global standardization, maybe accelerate it. If you're already doing TCFD reporting, you've got a head start. It turns compliance maybe from just a cost into, potentially a competitive advantage. The state seems to have these dual goals. Environmental stewardship, obviously, but also economic leadership through climate action.
So it's not just regulation for regulation's sake.
No, it's framed as driving opportunity, innovation, maybe prosperity for businesses that get ahead of this curve.
Okay, let's dig into the first one then,
Yep.
SB 253, the Climate Corporate Data Accountability Act. This is the emissions one, right? What companies put out.
That's the one. The core mandate is, pretty direct. It hits large U.S.-based companies with over $1 billion in annual revenue.
$1 billion, though.
If they are doing business in California, and they have to report their greenhouse gas emissions, GHG emissions, every year across all three scopes.
All three scopes, we'll get to those. But first, doing business in California. How broad is that?
That's a really key point. It's not just about being headquartered there. CARB, that's the California Air Resources Board, they're in charge of the regs. They're looking at definitions based on existing tax code thresholds.
Tax code, like sales or property.
Exactly. Things like, say, sales over about $735,000, or if 25% of your total sales are in California, or property or payroll over about $73,000. Or 25% of your total.
So even a relatively small footprint could trigger it for a huge company.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes. That's where it gets complex, especially for, big parent companies with lots of subsidiaries. A minor operation in California could theoretically pull in the whole global organization. An estimated 5,400 organizations might be impacted.
Wow. Okay. So complexity aside for a moment, what emissions do they actually have to report? You mentioned three scopes. Can you break those down?
Sure. It's standard GHG protocol stuff, but yeah, worth clarifying.
Okay.
Scope 1, That's your direct emissions. Think smoke from your factory chimney, exhaust from your company trucks, stuff you directly control and produce.
Got it. Direct.
Scope 2. That's indirect. From purchased energy, mostly the electricity your offices or factories use, but also steam, heat, cooling, your energy footprint, basically.
Okay, energy use. Makes sense.
Then Scope 3. And yeah, this is the big one, the one everyone talks about.
A tricky one.
The very tricky one. It's all other indirect emissions up and down your value chain.
Up and down, meaning?
Meaning everything from the emissions generated making the raw materials you buy to business travel, employee commuting, transporting your goods, and the emissions from customers actually using your products and disposing of them.
Whoa. That sounds massive.
It is. And here's the kicker. Some analyses suggest Scope 3 emissions can be like 11.4 times greater than Scope 1 and 2 combined for many companies.
11 times. So if I'm making, I don't know, cookies, I need to worry about the farms growing the wheat, the trucks delivering them, maybe even the ovens someone uses to bake them.
Pretty much, yeah. It's less baking, more quantum physics, like you said earlier. That's a good analogy. It highlights the scale of the challenge.
Okay, so how on earth do companies track that? Is there a standard? And how do we know the data's any good?
Right, good questions. The standard they point to is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, the GHGP. That's the established methodology. And for credibility, there's this phased approach for third-party assurance, like an audit.
Assurance. Okay.
So for Scope 1 and 2, they need limited assurance starting in 2026. Then that ramps up to reasonable assurance, a higher level by 2030.
And Scope 3?
Limited assurance for Scope 3 also starts by 2030. But, and this is really interesting, there's a safe harbor for Scope 3 until that 2030 deadline.
Safe harbor. Meaning?
Meaning, basically, protection from penalties for misstatements as long as they were made in good faith. It explicitly acknowledges the, quote, immense data collection and verification challenges. It gives companies time to build those systems.
It seems necessary.
It does. But there are concerns being raised, too. Like, are there enough qualified auditors out there to actually do this assurance work?
Good point. Capacity issues?
Yeah, and the cost. Estimates range from maybe $150,000 up to $500,000 a year just for the assurance piece. That's not insignificant.
Definitely not pocket change. Okay, so timelines. When does the clock actually start ticking for companies?
The deadlines in the law are pretty clear. 2026 is the first reporting year for Scope 1 and 2. That'll be based on their 2025 data.
Okay, 2026 for Scope 1 and 2.
Then 2027 is the first year for Scope 3 using 2026 data.
Right. But you mentioned CARB, the regulator, is delayed in finalizing the detailed rules.
That's right. The draft rules might not be out until late 2025, and final rules maybe not until late 2026, which is after the first reporting deadline.
So, does that mean companies get a pass?
No. And this is critical. The statutory deadlines, the ones written in the law, are firm. The delays don't change those.
So they need to prepare now, even without the final fine print.
Exactly. They can't afford to wait.
What if they don't? What are the consequences for not complying?
The penalties for SB 253 can get quite high, up to $500,000 per reporting year.
$500,000. Okay, that's serious.
It is. However, for that first reporting cycle in 2026, CARB has signaled it will exercise its enforcement discretion for Scope 1 and 2, meaning no penalties for incomplete reports if companies can show they made good faith efforts to comply and they've kept all the data they gathered.
Good faith effort. What does that actually mean in practice? Can they just say, oops, sorry, it was hard?
Probably not. The sources suggest it means showing demonstrable progress and commitment. Like, you've started collecting data, you're setting up systems, you're actively trying to comply, even if you don't get everything perfect the first time around.
So you can't just ignore it. You have to show your work, basically.
Exactly. Document your efforts. That seems to be the key.
Okay. Let's shift gears then to the other bill, SB 261, the Climate-Related Financial Risk Act. This one isn't about emissions out, it's about risk in, right?
Precisely. How climate change impacts the company's bottom line, its financial health.
And who does this one apply to?
The core mandate here hits U.S.-based companies doing business in California with annual revenues of at least $500 million.
$500 million. So a lower threshold than SB 253.
Right. Which means it actually impacts more companies. The estimates are around 10,000 organizations.
10,000. That's quite a reach.
It is. Though, interestingly, insurance companies are specifically exempt.
Oh, why is that?
The thinking seems to be they're already covered by other sector-specific regulations regarding climate risk from insurance regulator.
Okay, that makes sense. So for the 10,000 or so that are covered, What kind of risks do they need to report on?
It falls into two main buckets, generally following the TCFD framework.
TCFD again. How's that?
First are physical risks. Pretty straightforward, the impacts of extreme weather, sea level rise, drought, wildfires on your operations, your supply chain, your property.
Like a hurricane hitting your factory.
Exactly. Or drought impacting your agricultural suppliers. Then there are transition risks.
Transition risks. That sounds more abstract.
It can be, but it's just as important. It's about the financial impacts from the shift towards a lower carbon economy.
How so?
Things like new carbon taxes or regulations making your business model more expensive. Shifts in consumer preferences away from carbon-intensive products. Maybe technology changes making your current assets obsolete. Stranded assets, basically.
Got it. So policy changes, market shifts, tech disruptions.
All the financial ripples as the economy decarbonizes.
And how do they report this? Is it just write down what you're worried about?
Not quite. The reporting framework has to be consistent with the TCFD recommendations.
Okay.
Or an equivalent standard like the ones from the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB. Again, that alignment with global frameworks is key.
Right. Reduces the reporting burden for those already doing it.
Exactly. But here's an important difference from SB 253. SB 261 does not explicitly require third-party verification or assurance for these risk reports.
No, interesting. So no mandatory audit for the risk report itself.
Not explicitly stated in the law, no.
Okay. And the timing for these risk reports?
First reports are due January 1st, 2026, so same start date as the Scope 1 and 2 reporting under 253. That first report covers the 2025 financial year.
And
then it's biennial, so every 2 years after that.
Every 2 years. Got it. Now, what about those CARB rulemaking delays? Does that affect SB 261?
This is another crucial difference. SB 261 is considered largely self-executing.
Self-executing.
Meaning the core legal obligation to prepare and submit that report exists regardless of whether CARB has finalized detailed regulations yet.
So no excuse to wait on this one?
None at all. Companies cannot use regulatory uncertainty as a reason to delay preparing for SB 261. The deadline is the deadline.
Okay. And enforcement. What are the penalties here?
The fines for noncompliance are lower than SB 253, up to $50,000 per year.
$50,000. Okay.
But connecting this to the bigger picture, the sources really emphasize that the financial penalty might be the least of a company's worries.
How so?
Getting dinged for noncompliance could lead to, significant reputational damage. Think investor backlash, customer concerns. Right. Plus, increased regulatory scrutiny across the board, potential legal costs. For big companies, those indirect costs could dwarf the actual fine.
Yeah, reputation is huge. And is there any good faith effort leniency mentioned for SB 261 like there was for the first year of 253?
Not explicitly mentioned in the analyses we reviewed. The expectation seems to be pretty straightforward compliance from the get-go for the risk reporting.
Okay, so more stringent on the risk reporting start date, it sounds like.
It appears that way, yes.
So putting these two together, SB 253 on emissions, SB 261 on financial risk.
Yeah.
What's the combined effect? It feels like they're designed to work in tandem.
They absolutely are. It creates this synergistic and comprehensive regulatory framework. They complement each other.
How so?
Well, like we said, 253 is about the company's impact on the climate, its emissions footprint. 261 is about the climate's impact on the company, its financial vulnerability.
Inside out, not outside in.
Exactly. It gives stakeholders that holistic view. And having two laws with those different revenue thresholds and reporting frequencies.
Yeah, why do that? Why not one big law?
It seems like a nuanced regulatory strategy, maybe to maximize the reach, catching more companies with the risk reporting, while perhaps managing the compliance burden, since the really complex Scope 3 stuff is only for the absolute largest players under SB 253.
Interesting layering approach.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for almost everyone listening, I think. The ripple effect. You mentioned it earlier, impacting companies way beyond California.
This is crucial. Because even if your company doesn't hit the revenue thresholds or doesn't directly do business in California under those definitions, if you're a supplier to a company that is covered by SB 253 or 261, you're going to feel this.
How?
Because those covered companies, to do their Scope 3 reporting or to properly assess their climate risks, they need data from their suppliers. Emissions data, risk assessments.
So they'll start demanding it from their supply chain.
Exactly. It effectively extends the reach of California's regulations beyond its direct jurisdiction. It travels through commercial relationships.
So my small parts manufacturer in Ohio, selling to a big company that sells into California.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I need to figure out my carbon footprint?
That's highly likely, yes. It's not just a California issue anymore. It becomes a global supply chain issue, a new cost of doing business, potentially.
Wow. That really does change the game.
Yeah.
So what does all this mean for just general corporate strategy and how companies operate day to day?
Well, fundamentally, it demands a shift in corporate governance. Boards need to actively oversee climate risk now.
Yeah.
It has to be integrated into financial reporting, into strategic planning. It can't be siloed in the sustainability department anymore.
It becomes a core business issue.
Absolutely. And practically, companies need really robust data management systems. This is a huge data challenge.
I bet.
Some sources are even talking about the potential for AI-powered tools to help manage this tracking emissions in real time, engaging suppliers, validating data, turning this massive task into something, well, maybe manageable.
Using tech to handle the complexity.
Right. And connecting it to the bigger picture again, these California laws just reinforce those broader global trends in ESG reporting.
Environmental, social, and governance.
Exactly. If you're already aligning with TCFD, ISSB, or the EU's CSRD, you're in a much better position to handle these California rules. It underscores that global shift towards transparency.
So, pulling it all together, for companies trying to navigate this, what's the bottom line? What's the main takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is that California's SB 253 and 261 really signal a pivotal moment for climate accountability in the U.S. They're designed to boost transparency, give stakeholders, investors, customers critical info about a company's footprint and its financial exposure to climate change.
And importantly, even though CARB is still working out the final regulatory details, those statutory deadlines are firm. Companies need to be preparing now.
Absolutely. Proactive preparation is key, and that good faith effort for SB 253's first year means showing diligence, showing progress, not just waiting. It's not an exemption. Yeah. And remember, the strategic design, the impact, is meant to go way beyond California, pushing through global supply chains, aligning with international standards. That ripple effect is real.
So for businesses, it seems compliance isn't just about dodging fines. There's an opportunity here.
That's how it's being framed, an opportunity to turn these obligations into potentially strategic advantages, building resilience, attracting investors who care about this, building trust with customers in this increasingly climate-focused world.
Transforming regulation into resilience and reputation.
That's the idea, which leads to, I think, a really interesting question for everyone to consider.
Okay.
As these laws force businesses to weave climate data right into their core operations, financials, strategy, how might this unprecedented level of transparency start to fundamentally shift competition? Could it actually redefine what we mean by value in the global marketplace? What really stands out to you when you think about the long game here, this new era of mandatory climate disclosure?
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Come back to get informed about how your representatives are changing California.